this video, I'm going to talk you through how HR wastes your time. They play mind games with you, they like to manipulate you, and we're going to go through some key skills on how to outsmart them. So firstly, let's listen to some HR jargon and how they use all these complex corporate terminology to kind of manipulate you. Let's try and understand what this HR expert is talking about.
In this adaptable environment, this adaptable organization with a people-first mindset is the way to unlock innovation and set the conditions for us to chart this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, is to enable people through the organization's purpose, but to enable and engage people to do their very best work. And the reason why is because you're clear on purpose, expectations are known, and development plans.
So he's mentioning adaptable environment, which is just code for we expect employees to constantly change to a company that doesn't have a clear direction or a clear management framework in terms of how they want to direct the business. And I've worked at companies where you have complete mess, essentially, right? You might have a merger and then the managers don't know what they're doing. They don't know who's going to get fired, who's going to stay, how they're going to organize the structure of the company. All of a sudden, so many people are being part of restructuring and they're losing their jobs. Some people who are senior management, the C-level executive, the C-level executives like CEOs, chief legal officers, people like that. You never know, someone might be joining or leaving. All this type of ridiculousness. That's typically what they mean by an adaptable environment. It means they have a disorganization within the company and you need to be able to adapt to it, right? And anything that goes wrong or anything that's completely disorganized, they won't say the company's disorganized. They will say you're not adaptable enough, right? They'll always put it back on you. And that's why you need to be careful of how you handle that. Like, what companies tend to do, they tend to dump lots of blame on you and say it's your personal responsibility or your performance issue when it's really a company issue. So you've got to be careful about dodging that. Sometimes you can say there's a systems issue or there's a process or procedure that needs to be improved, rather than just taking all the blame and saying, well, yeah, it's my fault, I should have done better. Really try to avoid responsibility the same way companies do, in a tactful way. They're talking about a people first mindset, which is just saying we care about people, but really it means, pretending you all have to pretend to care about each other, the typical one team, one dream, we're all one big family type of thing. But it just means, we're going to put people first, but put you under a lot of pressure to, help the company increase their numbers, whether it's profit or productivity in any way. Now, when it's talking about unlocking innovation, typically they mean like cost-saving ideas, right? So things that will boost their reputation and things that you won't necessarily get the credit for, but the company will. So there's all sorts of mind games going on there. And then there's a term he uses here, which is handling VUCA, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which is completely crazy, but I did look it up. But VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, is actually a technical management term, right? And what I mean by that is actually it's managerial speak for essentially, if things do go wrong, we'll need you to kind of handle the mess that is being created and deal with the confusion without any clear answers. And then he talks about enable and engage people to do their best work. And what he's really meaning there is we'll try to keep you motivated, but only if it aligns to the company's goals, right? It's kind of keep pushing you and putting you pressure on you to keep you engaged. And then it's talking about being clear on purpose, right? But typically when they say clear on purpose, typically a lot of these companies have these broad, vague mission statements, but they don't really relate these mission statements to your day-to-day work. There's very much a loose link there. And that's why long-term, I'd always recommend everyone, work for companies you want to work for, but always consider, the level of ownership you have with that company, and always understand your investment in any company or any type of job, any income source. It's always going to be linked to the level of ownership you have. So if you're working for a company, you don't mind working for them, at some point you're going to develop a level of experience where you might want to be a contract worker, a freelancer, something like that, right? Or do your own thing. So when you're being told to follow the company's purpose, it's going to differ from what your purpose is and what your life mission statement is. And you should always see whatever you're doing for a company, how is that aligning with your life goals, your mission statement, your personal purpose? Because when they're misaligned, that's when you're going to feel unhappy at work, get depressed, and kind of develop some bad habits, or you just be in a complete state of disarray in your life day to day. So really try to line up the company's purpose with you. And it could be simply earning a high salary to save and invest, to retire early, or to move to another job. But make sure there's a connection there. Otherwise, you will feel disconnected and they'll sense it over time, and they could log it as a performance issue, some kind of vague performance issue that you don't seem invested in the work. And when he talks about expectations being known, you're expected to do whatever it takes, right? Even though no one actually tells you what the expectations are. Typically, expectations are quite vague, right? What your company expects of you, what your manager expects of you. Only when something goes wrong, they'll say, oh, you didn't meet your performance expectations that we had for you, right? And like I say, they don't want to take responsibility or accountability. So you got to be careful what you're taking responsibility and accountability for, particularly when it comes to performance reviews. Anything in writing, I do push back, and I have pushed back, completely ridiculous feedback points about me having long detailed emails when sometimes we require detailed analysis, sometimes they want a quick answer, sometimes me putting too many bullet points in an email. There's so many ridiculous things that managers expect. I remember one time my managing director, she didn't like the fact that the way the company system works is when you send attachments and they're quite large, they kind of compress it and put it in a zip file. And she didn't like the fact that I assume with other employees too, that when I send her an email, sometimes if the file is large, it'll be in a zip file, and then she has to obviously download it and unzip it, which is takes 2 seconds. But she said, oh, I don't want to do that, send it to me another way. So it's just completely ridiculous things that you have to take as expectations on how to deal with these management. In that case, I just said, okay, and I sent it her another way. But next time I would have said, listen, this is how the company system Outlook automatically works. It zips the file because it's large. I'm not going to send you an unzipped version through another way to a shared file when you could just unzip it yourself. It's just completely ridiculous sometimes. And then they talk about development plans are in place to support you. Typically, development plans is just putting more pressure on your back, putting more things in writing on what you should do, more reasons why if they want to justify firing you, they can. Or if you're one of the favorites, they'll give you lots of gray areas where if you don't meet your development expectations, they still, give you a decent review. So it's a bit of a double standard there. And then let's listen to another clip here.
Workshop modules cover both the principles, mechanics, and tools of defining accountabilities, as well as the practices necessary to enable decision-making at the right levels and the psychology behind engaging people's commitment. First, we reframe what accountability should be, and we expand on that to show how you can define accountability.
Look at all these charts on this page to communicate who's in charge of what. It's like middle managers. They exist to create problems so that they can solve them so that they have a job. It helps unlock people's ability.
Let's go back and really look through this in detail because it's quite a quick point that she was going through here. So this is quite an interesting thing. Firstly, when companies talk about accountability, it's about putting accountability on you as the employee so you can be the person they blame if something goes wrong. Company, HR, managers, they're never accountable. They're always got a million different passive-aggressive ways of saying it's not their fault and that you need to step up, manage your manager. You need to be more proactive. It's just completely vague BS statements. This is how HR can, like I say, control the perception around you, because in HR, similar with audit, risk management roles, it's all about manufacturing narratives. And what do I mean by that? They want to manufacture a positive narrative around someone who's the manager's favorite and say a particular employee is good so they can get promoted and put in senior roles. Audit might manufacture that the company's doing what it technically should be doing, and any major audit findings are actually not big audit findings, small audit findings that they can quickly fix. HR will manufacture positive or negative perceptions around management too, or employees. It's all about manufacturing a narrative. And that's what I mean by accountability being very selective. Now, middle management, he made a quick point there around how middle management will come up with some of these ideas and play along with some of this narrative. So there'll be so many nonsense things that middle management get up to, pointless meetings. I remember at some investment banks, they do things called lunch and learn, which is the dumbest idea. A lunch and learn on trading floors of major investment banks. It basically means senior people or middle management people will teach you or teach the team of various seniority levels, junior to senior, about a particular topic. So they might pick algorithmic trading. And then what that means is on that one day a week, that senior manager, whoever it could be, will teach you on that topic, but it'll be during the lunch break. So essentially you're allowed to go and get lunch, then you have to come to a meeting room, eat your sandwich or whatever lunch you can get, and sit through a 45-minute to 1 hour meeting where someone's going to teach you about a topic, but you're allowed to eat lunch during that topic. It can really have that teaching session during any time of the day, but it has to be lunch and learn, so it seems like informal and kind of team building, and then you can't even eat your lunch in peace. So there's so many things like that. There's other things like lessons learned, where you'd have meetings where employees are selected to go and investigate something that's happened in the news related to finance, and then go and teach everyone about it on a slide. And it's the type of thing where you could do it quickly on an email with a few bullet points. You could do things like that, but it's all about selectively raising your profile at the right time with the right stakeholders. These are the HR type of mind games that get played, and it's really how a lot of middle management and senior management get visibility with the team and show some level of seniority and teaching the junior employees. And it's just all about show, right? It's about theatre. And the best way of understanding the office, the corporate environment, it's all about theatre. It's a theatre show. That's why say all those little details, wearing a nice suit, being friendly and sociable, being popular, all of those things are so important. Just you're putting on a theatre show, right? The same way the company fakes a lot of productivity and profitability numbers and things like that on their balance sheet that are highly suspect when it comes to investment banks. You can look into that. It's all about putting on a show, right? And the interesting thing is, why wouldn't HR speak in clear English? Because everything is about manipulation and doublespeak. They can't be honest with you. They can't just tell you something straight up. Everything's a very subtle mind game, or such an over complex mind game, where if we look at this slide, we're going to think this through. It mentions accountability, and it says who is accountable for what. It's like a vague term, right? Defining clear accountability to foster a culture of trust and to ensure results. You know, you can't trust the company you're working for. Your management might lie about you getting a promotion in the next year when they may have no intention of that. There's no culture of trust in a company. It wouldn't function like that. If they were honest with you, you'd see the difference between what your salary is versus how much money you actually generate for the company, or how much money you help the company save through risk management, audit, things like that, right? There's no real culture of trust, and ensuring results, like I say, results can be very vague unless you're in a specific sales role, a specific trading role where you have to generate a certain amount of money. Most people work in office jobs where the results are very vague. So that can be, you know, manufactured one way or the other. They can either say you didn't meet a particular objective, or they can just say if they like the employee, give them extra time to do it. They can just determine the results and the goalposts and shift the goalposts whenever it's convenient for them. So look out for words like this and these type of phrases. And then it mentions here under vertical and lateral accountabilities, again, just garbage words, cross-functional working relationships, right? Now to enable smoother handoffs. And what they're actually saying here, right? You have to really think this cross-functional working relationships. So I assume that means working relationships between different departments, and to enable smoother handoffs, handing off tasks from one team to the other, one department to the other. These technically should be very easy things because they should be part of the daily process. But what I've realized is when it comes to handing things over and handing work over, particularly when someone's about to go on holiday, on maternity leave, someone's leaving the company, I don't know if it's deliberate, and let me know in the comments, but I noticed people deliberately, in my interpretation, reading in between the lines, they deliberately do bad handovers. You know, a handover would be when someone's about to, like I say, be away from the office for whatever reason, and they're giving their work task to somebody else on the team while they go on maternity leave for some reason, or leaving the company completely. They always do a really shoddy handover. They don't put things in clear writing. They don't clearly, log what the items are, what the tasks are, what the procedure or process is. It's always been done in a bad way, and I wonder why. Do people, when they leave a job or they're even going on holiday and going to come back to the job, they don't want to give too much information away on how they do the task because it might be super easy. They want to make it seem more complicated, or that other people can't do it and they're the only people that can do it. It's very interesting because typically when I do a handover, when I leave a company, it's very easy to put it in a Word document, put it in an Excel file, the tasks, the key contacts, how to do the task, the procedures that are relevant to that, explaining it to other team members in several meetings. But I've never had that reciprocated, right? And I think it is a deliberate, passive-aggressive, strategic thing where people deliberately do a trash handover to other people so they can be like, oh, I'm so important, only I can do this. The other thing is, it mentions here in the under context setting, it talks about decision making. Now let's think about decision making at the right level. Now what the thing is, people don't want to take accountability, as I say. So when it comes to decision making, people do a lot of strategic things. There's a term in finance where they call it spreading the risk in major investment banks. Spreading the risk basically means before you make a very risky decision, that maybe the business wants to move ahead with a risky investment or something like that, or a very questionable client relationship where they might be making a risky transaction. What they want is, they don't want one person to sign off on it. They want multiple people to sign off on it, so no one takes personal accountability and could be fired when something goes wrong, because there's so many risky, questionable relationships between an investment bank and a government that might do something questionable, like Saudi Arabia or certain other, developing countries where there've been some issues around. You could look into 1MDB and Goldman Sachs, and there's different banks and some of the questionable dynamics they've had with certain governments, right? And it's very risky type of investments. So what they end up doing is they have committees. We have a risk committee, an audit committee. We have a reputational risk committee to make sure it doesn't impact the company's reputation, and then we do a risk assessment, and then we come to a reasonable conclusion, and then everyone agreed on it, and it's no one's fault. We just didn't see this one thing that's been outstanding for like 2 years. That's a major gap in our risk controls. There's so many things like that, and decision making is essentially spreading the risk, make this decision making vague, no personal accountability or responsibility. And then lastly, we have physical contracts. How do we engage commitment? This is a very big red flag for you to look out for. Psychological contract. Sorry, I think I read it wrong the first time. Psychological contract. How do we engage commitment? Create the environment for engaged commitment by understanding and addressing the unspoken needs of humans at work. Psychological contract. And that's a completely crazy statement to make. You might see that in some kind of MK Ultra type programming, right? But psychological contract is just basically how can we manipulate the employee to be very deeply invested in the company. So how can you convince people to be deeply invested in the company, right? So it could be maybe giving them time off work when it's convenient for them, when it comes to which is a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but really be careful about how you're put under a false illusion that the company cares about you, and if you have a personal commitment outside of work, they'll be flexible around that, because the company always wants to squeeze more out of you than it's giving. So just be aware of that if they are being maybe overly nice and friendly and you're finding it a bit suspicious.
It's from an HR conference called Disrupt HR. And they have an HR person or a speaker, whoever, comes out on stage with a guitar and starts singing about HR and why we should, it's just kumbaya for real.
We'll be fighting in the streets with our children at our feet, and the morals that we worshipped will be gone. Sit in judgment of all wrong, they decide, and the shotgun sings a song. So I say, when did we get so serious? When did we forget about having fun in the workplace?
We forgot about it when people started getting fired after they said they weren't going to fire you, and people stopped getting raises after they said they were going to get a raise. That's when we stopped having fun.
What are the consequences of not having fun in the workplace? Well, I'll tell you what it is. The most recent worldwide employee engagement survey says that 98% of employees hate their...
So hard to watch because it just feels like he's struggling to keep their attention, but he also knows it. But also, like, how do you make this entertaining?
And think their managers are idiots. Look, we have a huge problem. Most of our workforce is checked out. This is the leadership challenge of the day, which is how do we, as companies in a wildly competitive business environment, engage our employees?
How do we?
So this is the complete ridiculousness of a HR conference, right? It's a waste of company money, waste of company time. And the question is, why do it? This is typically the fake fun, the mandatory cringe, company cults that they want to create. And the thing is like, who's really buying into this type of nonsense? What type of personality likes this? What type of personality isn't cringing at this? And that's what I really think, who's really fitting in with the corporate environment, right? It's a very tight-knit group, in my opinion, a very small, specific demographic that you've either got to play ball with if you want to survive in the corporate environment, or you're actually part of a demographic, right? And let's dig into that a bit deeper, right? So this only works for a small demographic of who fits in here. And I'm just speaking on my experience. I know sometimes people get sensitive in the comments, but I notice it's typically AWFLs. It's affluent white female liberals, or it's kind of liberal men, right? The soy boy, the bug man, however you want to define them, right? No one else really finds this kind of an environment that they'd even be comfortable with without feeling really like physically uncomfortable. I think everyone else would be like, oh, I don't really want to be here. So let's dig into that a bit deeper, right? So let's think about this. So essentially we have different demographics: Asian men, black men, white men who are more right-wing leaning. They probably wouldn't feel comfortable in this. And I'm sure there's other white women, black women, Asian, Hispanic, and so on, who would just be like, why is this even part of work? Like, what is going on? I just want to do my job, right? Now, and I dug into this deeper, and I'm sure some of you are aware of this if you've kind of been around for right-wing Twitter, or you're aware of what's going on in the world, and I'll be careful how I word it here. But there's a thing called physiognomy, right? Now, physiognomy, I'm not pronouncing it right, but it essentially means to what extent can we determine someone's character from the look on their face. And here's a simple meme that went viral many times, right? And it says, if a person has ugly thoughts, it begins to show on their face. And when that person has ugly thoughts every day, every week, for many years, they look uglier. Whereas if someone has good thoughts, they can't really be ugly, even if they have unaesthetic facial features, because they have a positivity or a good nature. It shines through them. And there's examples of this, right? And I'll show you some examples. The first guy you see here in the top left hand corner is this guy who's that HR guy you just saw at the start of the video. Then you've got Keir Starmer, leader of the UK, Macron Trudeau, leader of France and Canada. You got Jimmy Kimmel and all these other nighttime TV show guys. These are the type of characters you typically see in a lot of positions of power that rule all over us and push their double standard liberal, anti-male, in some cases anti-white bias on everyone else, right? And then on the other side, you have someone called Will Noland, who's an interesting character. He has a YouTube channel. He was actually a school teacher, a college teacher at Eton College. Now, Eton College is one of the main high-profile, prestigious colleges, and he got cancelled, he got fired, because he just did one presentation called The Patriarchy Paradox, where he talked about some of the benefits of men being men and the patriarchy. And there was a big cancellation against him. He was in the news. And what's quite interesting, I'm sure he was aware he was going to get cancelled, so I assume he saved enough or prepared ahead for that. He kind of got cancelled. He has a wife, he has 6 kids, and he was doing some tutoring of students to make income when he couldn't get a job. He basically nuked his own life or ruined his own life. And I guess he was aware of what the outcome would be when he was going to say something positive about patriarchy at a major UK college. But it just goes to show you, when you look at someone's face, you can really sense their nature. And why is it so many people in positions of power look like the demographic on the left, the liberal man, however you want to define him? Nietzsche talks about the end man, the last man, which is this typical kind of self-righteous character, which is kind of slimy and greasy and don't have honor and morals, which most men typically value. We highly value honor. And that's why, and I'll cover this in future videos, why you don't have honor as a concept, or masculine virtues, honor, strength, courage, mastery. That's not really things that are glorified within the work environment, and that's why you do feel a bit uncomfortable about that. And you can just look at their faces, and we can't judge everyone based on the way their face looks, but you can tell the character based on this, right? And how many of your managers do look like the group on the left? Let's be honest here. Similarly, we can do it with women, right? And again, I'm not saying the woman on the right who is some conservative female characters, MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Ann Coulter, Candace Owens, and then you compare it to the people on the left, Jacinda Ardern, who was the leader of New Zealand, pushing those really harsh lockdowns on people, Sana Marin, who again had these harsh rules, this whole feminist type of government, and she was actually cheating on her husband, doing illicit substances. And then you have Angela Rayner, who's a similar kind of left-wing figure in the UK, and Stacey Abrams. you can just look at their face and just determine their character, right? I'm not saying you should judge them, people completely based on the way their face looks, but there is something to be said about that, right? And this is what I mean. It's really a demographic thing of who's going to fit in with this type of corporate culture. If companies are really concerned about profit and having the best people, they would just be like, oh, you know what, there's that coder, he might have some politically incorrect opinions or jokes, but who cares? If he wants to feel comfortable at work and say some politically incorrect things, let's just get on with it, because he's going to make a great product which we can sell for a high price. They don't really operate on this. Everything's about ideological hierarchy, tightness of control. That's why companies will accept a lower standard of work for an employee who's more controllable and more conformist, because that's what the West is running in. West is not focused on honorable men or competent meritocratic systems. They're focused on, oh, who can we control? I can see this with politicians, blackmail, the E-Island, all these type of video recordings of politicians and celebrities. Is all about control. It's not actually about the quality of someone's character. So, and the whole thing about like having fun in the workplace, you saw that little clip where the HR conference was singing. The definition can vary, and it's only one specific demographic. Like I say, the type of woman on the left here, the type of men on the left here that would actually enjoy this type of thing. And that's very important to think about, right? And the thing is, when these HR characters talk about workers not being engaged, it's kind of ironic because, you know, given they create this type of culture that doesn't engage employees, and if employees are honest about what keeps them engaged, whether it's working from home or maybe for some people feeling comfortable to make certain jokes at work, they're not really going to make that acceptable. So it's just like having fun in the workplace, this only really applies to what appeals to these people on the left here, or these men or these women on the left here. So that's just what it is.
The key people, go to anyone.
Pressure. You'll see what I mean in a second when I play this video.
So let's edit that small little clip there. Now we're going to talk through another small clips where employees are being manipulated by HR who want you to stay at the company. So they start digging for information. Are you looking for other jobs? Do you like your job here? What can we do to make your life easier here? And it's very manipulative what they're doing. They're digging for information you don't typically need to share, that you can give them a bunch of lies to, a bunch of lieful answers in terms of, I really enjoy this job. Oh, I'm not looking for another job. Because anything critical you say about the company or the job, they can leverage against you to give you a layoff, to say you're not enthusiastic or invested in the work, you're not aligned with the company's goals. So you've got to be very careful what you say with HR. They're their key tattletale. They're like the teacher's pet of the company. They're the hall monitor, if you want to keep it references to high school and things. They're like the hall monitor. They'll just snitch on you to the teacher to get some extra points.
Go to key people, go to anyone and say, how are you feeling? I just did this with a team member last week. And I said, you leave me with the experience that things have been really tough for you lately.
The people that work in HR are not your mental health practitioners. They're not your doctors. They're not your psychologists. They're not your therapists. They're none of those. They are your coworker at work. So stop telling them about your life and your feelings and all the inner details and the inner workings of how things are going for you, because they're there to help you help the business. They're not just there to help you. If HR comes up to you and says, how are you feeling? You tell them everything's good, thank you, what they want to hear. They're not there to be your friend, and anyone else who says otherwise is a liar. Oh,
so that first little clip is interesting. Like I say, these type of stay interviews, right? HR are operating like spies to protect the company and find out any detail that you're not happy about, and they'll spread it with management, right? They're like a nosy, gossiping auntie. And the solution here is just to say less, be fake happy, pretend everything's okay. And till you hand in your notice and you quit the job. That's really your kind of options there. I've noticed HR in particular, compared to any other group of people, everyone's gossiping, sharing information. But like I say, when you say something to HR or a woman at work, is typically going to go around the office quicker than you can imagine, right? Many times I had one or two discussions with HR, and all of a sudden tons of people knew what I said and mentioned it to me in separate conversations that had nothing on that topic, and I didn't even know they knew that person in HR that well. So it's the type of ridiculousness you just have to tolerate to survive in this environment.
They have. And I said, if a recruiter called you right now from the right place and it was at the right time, would you take it? And she said,
tough thing to ask.
I mean, it's probably best to never tell your head of HR at the company you're working at, yes, I would take a call from another recruiter right now because things are difficult here. Maybe don't say that.
I can imagine that most managers are like, I'm not going to breach this topic. If I bring it up, it'll make it real.
I appreciate this person's candor. At least she's honest. I'm afraid to have these conversations about our problems at the company. Instead, we prefer to just twiddle our thumbs and wonder why everyone is quitting, and then we'll get on Facebook or LinkedIn and make a post about how nobody wants to work anymore. Let me give you a piece of advice about workplaces that has taken me some time to learn. You have a much higher chance at going somewhere else and finding a place that you vibe than changing the place you currently are where you don't vibe.
So the first thing to point out here is how funny it is that HR are trying to dig into, are you reaching out to recruiters? Literally everything you do when it pertains to your life outside of work is none of the company's business. So make us up as many lies as you want, right? If you're spending your weekend building your side business, tell your co-workers you're spending some time with friends, and then mention a TV show, the latest football game that was on TV that you watched, or whatever little BS that you have to give them, right? Anything pertaining to your life, reaching out to recruiters, building a side business, your personal investments, any little detail like that is none of their business, right? I remember one time, for example, I was starting at a company, just getting to know them, and I was kind of making responsible, smart decisions that are kind of paying off quite effectively now, making overpayments for my mortgage and things like that. And I wouldn't even mention that in that much detail, but someone was like, oh, you're going on holiday this year? I said, no, I'm just kind of saving money, just paying down the mortgage, things like that. Because I live in a small 1-bedroom apartment, as I mentioned in a few videos. I don't want to be paying like a mortgage forever or living in an oversized house, right? And they were like, don't say that, you shouldn't say that, just make up some reason or something else. Can I just not make a simple statement like, oh, just overpaying the mortgage, just pay down the mortgage, things like that? It's like completely ridiculous. Like, yeah, this is the thing, to fit in some of these corporate environments, it's just not enough for you to do the work. You got to do the work and have the same interests as them and go on the same type of holidays as them. It just becomes ridiculous. Any smart decision that's actually going to make you free from the system, free from the corporate environment, they see it as a threat. Anything that could make you free from the company, looking for another job, living a quiet life, I don't know, it's like some kind of offensive statement that you made to them. If you're not engaging in some type of bad habit that they might have, like getting drunk every Friday or going to Thursday work drinks, or I don't know, spending each day drinking multiple coffees, I don't know, it's like some kind of offensive thing because you're not a crab in the same bucket as them. It's just ridiculous. These are the type of things to look out for, right? If they mention, are you reaching out to recruiters? Obviously you should say no, you're not reaching out to recruiters and you're super happy to work here and you're looking forward to working hard and making it to the next level of management and things like that. And the thing is, they could always dismiss you out of spite. They can ask you all these questions and then just think you're not invested in the job and try to push you out the company, dump loads of work on you. In the same way you might want to quiet quit and put in less effort, they can kind of do use their own type of strategies. Like I say, dumping loads of work on you, putting you in a pip, putting you under too much time pressure. They have too much leverage because they're the company. There really is a slave master slave dynamic there, right? Where the company can make up any narrative about you, negative or positive. They can dump loads of work on you and say it's your normal workload and you can't handle your work and they need to fire you because of that. So just be careful what you tell them, right? They already have the advantage. The only, if you look into the art of war, the only key factor in art of war is everything about war is about deception, right? And I'm not saying you have to be a super manipulative, lying psychopath, things like that. I'm just saying, you can easily deceive a company by faking an interest in it. You can easily, lie to them that you're not looking for another job when you are. I don't feel comfortable personally with lying as much as you need to lie to survive in the corporate environment, but it's just, you just got to understand you're deceiving them as much as they're deceiving you, so don't feel bad about it, right? And the thing is, he's making a good point at the end here. You can't really change policies, people, procedures. There are many times where I try to make things more efficient, but you realize the inefficiencies there are there for a reason, right? They simply want certain teams who really could be eliminated quite easily with Excel files, macros, basic Python, even before you get into AI and automation. But they want certain inefficiencies there because certain management want to maintain their position of power. So anything when it comes to a company, you should understand they're always mini empires. Within every department is like an empire, and with it they're mini empires of mid-level senior management who want things to operate a certain way to maintain their own prestigious position that could be technically eliminated. So just realize the inefficiencies are there for a reason, and if you want to leave, you can just do that, and that's easier than trying to change things and make your life better there. So my take is that it's very rare to find a perfect place when he talks about going somewhere, going to a company where you vibe at. It's going to be very simple to very similar at all companies. Some are better than the others. There is a general difference between, say, startups and investment banks, commercial banking and investment banking. Asset management is more slow paced and more 9 to 5 type of job compared to the long hours in investment banking. But generally, all the asset managers are going to be the same. All the investment banks are going to be the same. The big four accountancy firms are going to be similar. So it's just like when you're moving, just be realistic about what type of change you can deal with. And the way I would say it is, when it comes to choosing whether you remain at a job or move, is think about these things. Is it a tolerable level of work that you have? Can you tolerate the workload? Does it pay well or at market rate? And if you have to job hop to another company, could the work culture be a lot worse, even if you get more pay? So a job might not be your favorite thing, but is it tolerable? And if it pays well or at market rate, or you can increase your pay, then it's probably worth staying there. And if you're going to hop to another company and you get a pay rise, can you really deal with the culture being a lot worse or the manager being a lot difficult? Because it's very difficult to predict when you're moving to another company and thinking, oh, I'm going to get a pay rise, an extra 20% of my salary, an extra 20 grand, something like that. But that extra 20 grand, does it come with a manager who's going to bully you? Does that come with co-workers who are going to gossip around you? And is it really worth that extra money? So just bear that in mind, when you are just thinking about job hopping all the time. It might not work out as you think it will. You don't have to disclose anything to the company, like I say, about what you do outside of work. So bear that in mind. Because if they say you're because they've gained some information through the grapevine to maybe talking through their contacts outside of work, maybe recruiters they know, they might think, okay, cool, well, you're looking for another job. They might label that you have a lack of engagement, a lack of interest, you're unhappy at the job, you highlighted problems. In some of the improvements you might suggest, they might look at it as a negative thing and put a negative spin on it because they control the narrative and say, oh, you highlighted problems with the company, the process, the team and the manager. So it doesn't seem like you're happy here. So do you want to leave, or what's going on? They can reframe it that way and really kind of put you on the spot. Like, do you want us to fire you? Why are you saying anything negative about us, right? So that's why you have to be careful what you say. They could put anything on your employee file and list that against you. So the solution is quite simple, right? Do your job search quietly, pretend to play nicely with others, participate in the whole deceptive nature of work, attend a few work events just to keep your face around and appear to be overly friendly so they don't suspect you're doing less work. That's always your game plan there, right? Is kind of do less work, be more friendly, right? And what I mean by that is the social dynamics are more important than the actual productivity dynamics. So just bear in mind, putting in that extra 20% effort to be nice to everyone will actually go a lot further than putting an extra 20% to do more work or higher quality work. And it always will mask, if you're seen around the office, as seen as talking to people, it just gives the impression that you are being productive and busy, and they won't suspect you're actually doing less work if you are quiet quitting or if you are looking for another job. They won't have a negative perception of you that you just couldn't be bothered to do the job, or you're just not happy being there and you're looking for another job. Just a bunch of fake nice atmosphere and dynamics will help you more. Never give the impression that you're planning to leave. Like I say, just pretend like it's a normal work day. Because if they sense you're less invested in work tasks, they will use it to their advantage. So that's a key thing to bear in mind. Now, I am someone who's worked in investment banking for over 10 years at companies like Goldman and Morgan Stanley, and I hope you found that helpful to help you stay alert about how HR can manipulate you with mind games and waste your time. If you want career advice, there's a link in the description. I look forward to speaking with you directly and helping you navigate this type of weird, deceptive environment where they're lying all the time. Thanks for listening. 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, and I'll see you next time.